Joining me right now from his home in London, I believe, is a guy that I've been a fan of forever and lucky to have known for a very long time as well. Don't get to see him as much as I'd like because he doesn't live in the country, obviously. But every time there is some Thin Lizzy activity, we get a chance to usually speak with him, and that's exactly what we're about to do right now. Joining us live on the air, Thin Lizzy guitarist Scott Gorham. Scott, how are you, bud?
Good, Eddie. How the heck are you, bud?
I'm good, man. I miss you. You haven't gotten over here too much lately, have you?
I know. I was just thinking, I think the last time you and I hooked up was on that cruise ship, the rock cruise thing. Is that right?
Might have been Monsters of Rock Cruise. I also recall you were doing a Black Star Rider show with Saxon, and it was backstage. We sat and talked for a while in Milwaukee at that casino. So I remember everybody wanted to leave, and you and I were yapping, and everyone was shaking their head saying, we got to break these two up so we get Scott out of here.
That's how it gets. You know, when you haven't seen anybody for a while, you just start yapping away, and you kind of forget about everybody around you. So
yeah.
Great, man. It's really good talking with you.
Yeah, man. How did you, since it's been a little while since we spoke, how did you fare during the whole craziness of the lockdown and the pandemic and all of that? How did you spend your time, and how'd you do over there in England?
Well, it was actually okay. I mean, I didn't get ill at all. I knew a couple of people that got ill, not in a really bad way, but they did get affected. I just kept getting these booster shots all the time, so your arm was pretty sore after a while. But I mean, the boredom factor was really high, and it's that's the part that really stunk about the whole thing is you couldn't move left, you couldn't move right, you couldn't go straight ahead. You were just kind of stuck in this one place, and that's not just me. That's everybody, So I hear China's going through it right now. So good luck to them.
Scott, there were a lot of musicians that during that whole period would go in and they'd write, they'd record. Some just decided to just not really do much of anything, but a lot of them got creative. They did stuff online, streaming, what have you. For you, did you choose to spend your time doing anything like that, or was it more of just an opportunity for family time or what have you?
Well, it's kind of both. I didn't do any kind of Zoom recording. I really don't believe in that. I'm that guy. Call me old fashioned, whatever. But I like to be, in the same room, shoulder to shoulder, eye to eye, working, parts out, songs out. If there's a critique to be made, you want to be in the same room so everybody understands, gets the same vibe. The recording, on Zoom, that just seems, I don't want to say the word desperate, but almost uncalled for. It's like, well, just wait a little while. This thing will calm down, and then we can all get back together again, and, normal services will be resumed, But, hats off to the guys that did not want to go down that road and did all the kind of the Zoom recordings. And from what I can tell, all those recordings came out great. So
yeah.
Who am I to say? It's just for me. That's just the way I work it. I
yeah.
like to be in the same room.
No, and I've talked to artists like that, and they all feel that way. I mean, some made records and kind of thought it was fun recording with everybody in different places, and there's others that no, unless we're eye to eye in a room together, that's the way we vibe and make records, and I completely understand that. Now, one of the things you did do during the last couple of years was announce that you were done with Black Star Riders. Talk about that decision.
Well, I just felt that. Ricky and I, we had done it for 10 years. I think we had done maybe 5 albums, I want to say, or at least 4. So that's a pretty good glop of time, right? So I just felt it was time, here's the pandemic. Everything's coming to a standstill. This is probably the right time to kind of let that side of my life go. Let Ricky and the boys go ahead and keep it going, and it frees me up really to do other things. Like, if I wanted to go out and do the Thin Lizzy thing again, I'm freed up to do that, no problem. If I wanted to go out and, which I'm really seriously thinking of doing, is going in and doing a third 21 Guns album, which is pretty near and dear to my heart, you know. So I've been writing songs for that project there. So hopefully by the end of the year, I'm going to be able to get into the studio with Leif Johansson, who's my partner in 21 Guns, and, you know, go over to Oslo and Norway and get that thing going. So we'll see what happens on that one.
So 21 Guns was a band that you had at one point that it didn't really get too far here in the U.S., but did you do well with it in other parts of the world?
Well, we did. You know, we got kind of crushed, and I'll admit it, we got crushed by grunge, you know, as it was almost like the month we finally got that album out, you know, Pearl Jam and all these bands came out and just kind of swept the boards with everything, you know, and anything that was just that kind of nanosecond behind were kind of, you know, dusted. So it was a case of really bad timing. I mean, if you go back and listen to that album, I love it. I just think it's a great album. It was like for me, it was like a great album, but really the wrong time to bring it out. So hopefully our timing will be a little bit better this time, you know?
Yeah, of course, we're going to talk Thin Lizzy here in a second, but I just want to go back to Black Star Riders for a second. I don't think, and I talk about this all the time with my audience, Scott, I don't think fans realize, like, they would look at a band like Black Star Riders and they would see yourself with your history with Thin Lizzy, and then, you know, Ricky, who's known in certain parts of the world for his past and how great the stuff he did was, Damon, all these guys. They would think, well, a band like that, almost a super group of sorts, it's going to be a pretty easy ride. It'll be easy for them to get gigs and make money and get traction. And I say that all the time, like, no matter what mix of people you have, whatever their past is, it really is like starting from ground, from the bottom of again. Was that frustrating to you as a guy that had come out of a big band like Lizzy and all the stuff that you've done? Is it frustrating to hang in there with something where you really can't get it to the next level and over the hump?
Well, of course it is, you know, but, you know, I love these guys so much. I love playing with them. I love writing with them, going out on the road. You know, all of our personalities just gelled to a T. So that makes everything that much easier to hang in there. And I thought, you know, we actually wrote some really cool songs. We recorded some good albums, but, you know, it's something you need. That every band needs that bit of luck. You know, Thin Lizzy needed it. Every band out there, you know, you need that right song at the right time, you know, with the right people listening and buying, you know. So we just didn't have it at that point, and I'll be the first one to admit that. You know, it just didn't quite work. You know, we were just kind of a little bit of a nano's hair away from it almost working. I mean, it seemed like every album we put out, it would, you know, get in the, you know, top 5 of every rock chart. And so you're thinking, well, okay, man, we're on our way. That's great. That's really good news. But you need those national charts, right?
Yeah.
The rock charts are great. The indie charts are great. But, you know, what really matters is those. Are you really reaching the mass public, right?
Yep.
So you need to write those songs that are going to appeal to a mass audience. So, like I say, you know, we missed the mark, you know, a little bit with Black Star Riders, but because I love Ricky to death and all the guys, I really do. I really hope they do. I hope they go out and make like $10 million a piece and have multiple #1 albums. I think that would just be the greatest thing, right? But so I'm kind of looking towards the future. You know, for me, with the you know whole 21 Guns thing, and with the Lizzy thing, we'll see what happens down the road.
Yeah, well, I love Black Star Riders as well, and I hope they are just to be clear, they are continuing without you, right?
Absolutely. I made that clear. You can't shut this thing down just because I've packed my bags. That would be criminal to do that, because there's too many good songwriters, there's too many good players, too many good personalities on stage. Everybody's got to keep this thing going, and I don't think they even contemplate, especially Ricky, who loves fronting that whole thing. There was no doubt that in his mind that things were going to come to an end. So I was really happy about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good.
I did that because I didn't want to be the one, right, that actually kind of destroyed that whole thing. That would have made me just feel terrible if that would have happened. So I'm glad that it's working out this way.
Yeah, well, great songs, and it's interesting when you look at the arc of that, because it started out, it evolved out of Thin Lizzy wanting to play new material, not do it under that name, and then, of course, you were doing a mix of originals and Thin Lizzy songs, and then obviously it evolved into what it is now, which is, as you said, 4 or 5 real good records of original music that you were a part of, and now those guys will continue. All right, let me, I want to talk to you about this Thin Lizzy concert and the doc that's coming out, this box set that you're here to promote. But if it's cool with you, Scott, I want to put you on hold and take a quick break, and then just 2-3 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll get into this Lizzy set that's coming out. Is that cool?
That's cool with me, buddy.
All right, man. Let's put Scott on hold. We'll be right back after this break with more with Scott Gorham talking about Thin Lizzy, this amazing concert from 1978 that we'll talk about, and also the Phil Lynott doc, all coming out in a new set. We'll cover that with Scott right after this on Trunk Nation. Okay, we're back, and we are joined by Scott Gorham of Thin Lizzy, and we were just actually, before Scott joined us, we were just talking about DVDs and CDs and Blu-rays and how I still love getting them and stuff coming out on those formats. Well, that ties in perfectly with what we're going to talk about now, because there is a 2 DVD, CD, and a Blu-ray DVD, CD set coming out that combines a few different things in one package, and this will all be coming out on June 24th. First, let's talk about Songs for While I'm Away, which is the documentary on Phil Lynott, which I know did come out in, I guess, in Europe a little while ago. Here in America, it's not have been able to be as widely seen, so I'm glad this is finally coming out in this format. Scott, your thoughts on the documentary and, and how you thought they did with it, capturing Phil's story?
Well, as a matter of fact, I think they did it. It was an Irish crew that did it, Irish director, producer, all that, right? Sorry. So they were well versed on the whole history of Thin Lizzy, and pretty much each guy in the band also, right? And I thought they just did a great job with it, But probably one of the first questions I asked was, is this going to dwell on the whole drug thing? Because if it is, you can count me out, And I was assured that is not going to be, a main subject. But yeah, sure, you have to touch on it because, Phil did die of, drug abuse, not a drug overdose. It was drug abuse. So it has to be talked about. And I was okay with that, as long as they didn't dwell on that subject, I was okay, right? And they didn't, and it's great. And really what this documentary is all about, a lot of fans think, for any band, right? All people think, well, I know that guy. I know exactly what he's like. I'm pretty sure what his background is all about, how he grew up. Well, not really, unless you lived in his shoes or you stood right next to him, shoulder to shoulder, as I did for 11 years. You really don't know the whole story, right? And this documentary goes a very, very long way in clearing all that up to give everybody a clear picture of just how Phil Lynott grew up and how tough it was, but how well he came out the other end, with the whole thing, right? What I'm talking about is he initially grew up in Ireland with his grandmother brought him up because his mother gave birth to Phil out of wedlock, and back in the 50s in England and Ireland, I mean, that was the sin of sins. You did not do that, right? So what she did, she asked her mother, would you be okay with me dropping Phil off to you in Dublin and you bringing him up for me? And his grandmother said, absolutely, I will do that. She died way before I got to meet her, which is unfortunate. But, the other side really is him growing up as really being the lone black man for a whole country, which is pretty incredible. I mean, he was the only guy that looked the way he did out of about, I don't know what the population of Southern Ireland is right now. What is it, like 5-6 million people, something like that? He was the only guy, right? And how do you come out of that? In the end of that, I mean, it could either end one of two ways. You either turn into, a total prick and you're vengeful and you hate, the society and all that, or you turn out the way that Phil Lynott did, an extremely creative person who really had a lot of feelings for a lot of people in a lot of different situations. So, and that's the Phil I got to hang with, right? So this documentary kind of brings you through that whole.
Hey, Scott, are you there?
He was actually brought up and why he turned out the way he did. And I'm extremely grateful that the director actually went that route.
Yeah, Scott, I don't know if you're moving around at all, but we lost you a little bit there as far as your connection. So I don't know if you're walking around or moving around.
No, I'm sitting still right here. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you broke up there for a second, but it sounds like we got you okay now.
Thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. I watched the documentary. It's been a little bit since I've seen it. I watched it a little while ago, and I loved it. I love anything like this. I really do, and it's so deserved for Phil. But the one thing that I remember when I watched it is to me, this is, and it's accurately titled in more. To me, it's more of a documentary about Phil, who of course was synonymous with Thin Lizzy, but it's more about him and his life than it is so much about Thin Lizzy. It's not really the arc of the band. It doesn't cover every lineup change, every record, every period. I know there's only so much they could do within the confines of this. So the direction is more the life of Phil Lynott and how that tied in and became Thin Lizzy than it is really about all the people that contributed and every record and every lineup change. Do you think that somewhere down the line there could be a documentary that could maybe focus a little bit more on that? Have you ever heard anything about that?
Well, there's been talk about doing movies and this and that. And you're absolutely right. This one is dedicated to, Phil Lynott. And, Thin Lizzy is kind of on the, a bit on the peripheral edge. Obviously, there's going to be a good chunk of it, of Thin Lizzy in this documentary. But it's, really all about him and his personality and really how he grew up, which is, it's interesting. I've had so many people say that, like you, they really loved it, and they had no idea of the adversities that he had to go through, and turning out the way that he did. So, who knows? Maybe later on, I think maybe the same production team will want to come along and do the same thing with Thin Lizzy, and but that's kind of a big subject right there. There's sorry, wow, there's so much of it that it's probably going to come out to be like a 3-hour documentary. I don't know if anybody's got the stomach for that. But
well, that's just it, though. That's exactly my point. Is when it's a subject like this that is so great, like Thin Lizzy or Phil, I want the 3-4 hour deal. I want the whole enchilada. That was only my only criticism of the doc is, even though it comes in just around 2 hours, I'm like, damn, I want another hour of this, because I want to get into the thunder and lightning period, and I want to get into the bad reputation period, and I want all that little stuff, and I know a lot of other people do as well, but I know that's not necessarily the tone of what this particular documentary was going after. It was more about the life of Phil, his upbringing, as you mentioned, how difficult it was and how he persevered, which is a great story.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was the onus right there. It was supposed to be on Phil himself, the Lone Ranger right there. So, who knows, Eddie, maybe, somewhere down the line, like I say, the promotion team might think exactly the way you're thinking, and on the actual band itself, which hell, I'll be up for it. Hell, I was in the band, so I kind of know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, you are
the questions.
Right, you're the guy that's without a doubt the guy that, sadly with Phil being gone, that's got to carry that mantle. So along those lines, let me ask you about another disc that's going to be packaged with this set that's coming out on June 24th, which blew me away because I've never seen this. And I watched this just the other day, and that is, it's called The Boys Are Back in Town, live at the Sydney Opera House, October 1978. And I did not realize, Scott, until I started watching it, that this is the lineup of you and the late, great Gary Moore on guitar, which is just a lethal double guitar assault. I mean, everybody knows Thin Lizzy, known forever for the brilliant dual guitar stuff, no matter who was the other guy at your side. But the Gary Moore, Scott Gorham lineup of the band, I had not seen very much of in terms of video, and it completely blew me away. Do you have recollections? I know that this show for you was 44 years ago or whatever, but do you have recollections of it at all?
I absolutely do. This was Brian Downey had quit the band, a month before we were supposed to do this. It was combining an Australian tour, with an American tour. And that kind of threw me and Phil into this kind of, what the hell, Brian's left. And Phil was that kind of guy. No, we can carry on. We're going to get another drummer, and it's going to be great. And he and I flew up to Los Angeles. There was 4 drummers involved in the audition period. 2 of them I remember, 2 of them I don't. One of them was the great Terry Bozzio. And he got on Joy. I think he was the very first drummer that we auditioned, I guess we can say, and he was amazing, absolutely incredible, right? But he was okay with the time frame, he was okay with the money, but there was like one other thing that we just couldn't give him, so we said, okay, well let's try the next guy, right? Another guy came up, wasn't quite right, and then the last guy was the guy you're going to see on this concert. His name was Mark Nassif, who's
incredible.
He is. He's just a killer drummer, right? And Phil and I, after like 3 songs, we looked at each other and we thought, oh my God, this is the guy, And everything was right about him, He agreed to everything. There was no problem about anything with Mark. And but the great thing also, his personality just so fit with the rest of us. It was, and I hate to use the phrase, but it was like the no-brainer. Like, Mark, you are the guy, right? So we go off and we do this Australian tour, and we're headlining all the way through Australia. We're playing to between 10 and 15,000 people a night, but Sydney was another ball game altogether. We're sitting on the steps of the Sydney Opera House, which is their Taj Mahal. You take a look at any picture of that building, and you know exactly where in the world you are, right?
Yeah.
So it's the mayor of Sydney and the council people. They were really nervous about this whole thing. So what they did is they put a cap of 6,000. Okay, we'll let you do it, but we'll only let 6,000 people in. And we thought, okay, well, that's great. 6,000, that's a good glop of people. The background is great with, the Sydney Opera House and the Iron Bridge and, the estuary and all that. Great, for TV and, recording and all that. So we're in Melbourne, right? And unbeknownst to us, and Melbourne was the gig before Sydney, right? Unbeknownst to us, there's a radio station in Sydney that actually came on the air and said, well, ladies and gentlemen, you know that on Friday night, Thin Lizzy is coming to town, and they're playing at the Sydney Opera House, and guess what? We hear there are still tickets available, which there weren't. This had been sold out for a few weeks now, right? Now, and why whoever it was, they gave that information, I have no idea, right? So we fly into Sydney, and we can't do a sound check because there's a noise abatement act going on there. People are still working. You can't sound check. So we had our road crew do all of our checks for us, and all that's going to be fine, right? So we, as we're trying to get backstage, we realized the absolute volume of people, and now we can't actually get into our own show because we can't get a truck or a bus or a cab or anything through all these people, right? And we're all thinking, where the hell did these people come from? And we finally got back, and we were told what happened, and we were like, well, hey, the more the merrier. How cool is this? 70,000 people. All right, great. This is going to be party time, right? Then our monitor guy came in and said, I got some bad news. Your side monitors are completely broken. We can't get a replacement for it. So you're going to have to, deal with these little tiny monitors that each of us have in front of us, which were totally inadequate, right? So we thought, okay, well, we're rehearsed up enough. Not a problem. Then the sound guy, Pete Eustace, came up. The out front sound guy said, listen, we have a problem. I'm thinking, really great. Really another problem? So, the PA that was brought in was really only going to be powerful enough for the 6,000 capacity, not for 65,000 people. This is not going to be able to throw out, out in front and to give everybody a great sound, or all the people, we just thought it is what it is. We're going to have a great time. Let's just go out and do this thing and, work on muscle memory. If we can't hear each other, the muscle memory has got to work. And that's basically what we did. You'll see on this video, myself, Gary, and Phil, periodically we all come darting back to Mark, the drummer, to make sure that, everybody's in time and we're, got all the bits and parts together. But it kind of didn't make any difference because we were having such a good time. And I think you'll see on the concert itself, it actually came out pretty damn well. So
I got to tell you, I got to tell you, Scott, I was blown away by it. I mean, that period of the band, you guys all looked great. The energy on stage was incredible. Mark, so apparently I looked him up because I didn't know anything about the drummer. And I was like, where's Brian Downey? And I see this other drummer, and he's incredible. His playing is incredible. And I'm looking, and I looked him up, and I guess he has history. At one point, he was in Elf, which was Dio's band. He was from New York. He had history with Ronnie. And he's playing. And then, it was just so cool to see you and Gary. And I know Gary had an in and out history with Thin Lizzy and an up and down history. But he looked like he was in great spirits at that time being in the band, and the two of you guys so dialed in and playing so well together. Can you talk a little bit what it was like to, like, you're a guy, like, you're the constant for Thin Lizzy. You were there through the glory years, through all the key period, right? And then your side, you had amazing players, whether it was Gary Moore or Brian Robertson or John Sykes or whoever it was. How did you, because the dual harmony guitar stuff was such a big part of Thin Lizzy, and you each guitar player had their lead breaks, but that dialed in harmony stuff, how did you how did you work that out with all those different guitar players? Was there one that you felt more locked in with than any other?
Well, no, that's a really good question. I mean, each guy that came on board, because they were so good at what they did, you really didn't have to worry about, are you going to be able to pull your weight? Because each one of those guys did, and they did it in a great way. The only thing that was told to them is, okay, guys, there is history to this band. There's a certain way that these songs have to sound like, and you have to adhere to the plan, right? The lead guitar wise, if there is a sort of an iconic lead kind of thing guitar wise, kind of hint at that, and then go ahead, use your head, and have fun with it, right? Everybody did. It wasn't like a big deal to everybody, right? All the new guys coming in, because they got it. They knew that there was a blueprint to Thin Lizzy for the reasons why we got as far as we did. So, and they were going to adhere to the blueprint. When it got to the albums that they were on, well, then all bets were up. Now this is your album, and you're able to do whatever you want, and all of us, we're going to be right behind you, and not a problem. But with each guy coming in and playing the songs that were already there, everybody was really great at, like I say, at adhering to the blueprint. So that was great. It took all the pressure off, really.
And for the purposes of this show, when people will see it, what was it like for you working with Gary in this context? I mean, him coming into the band, I mean, from watching the show, the vibe seemed to be great. He was super animated, jumping around, smiling, having a great time. I mean, I didn't know Gary. I was a huge fan of his playing, but I didn't know him personally. But I knew that I had heard he could be hit or miss in terms of his demeanor. What was your experience like, both personally and playing wise, with Gary Moore?
Well, Gary was great to play with. He was actually a pretty generous guy. That the concert that you're going to see is not really the first time that he'd been in the band. If you remember, when Brian Robertson hurt his hand, Gary came in and subbed for Brian for the Queen tour, right? And that was like an amazingly successful tour for us. So when it came second time around for Gary to come in, I'd already worked with Gary. I already knew his personality. I already knew his playing. I knew what this guy could do. And all credit to Phil. Phil every time kept saying, whoever came in the band, he said, Scott, you're the guy that has to work with it. Ultimately, this is your decision. Should we get this guy in the band? And for me, once again, I hate to use the phrase, Gary was the no-brainer guy. I mean, he was at that time in rock, an elite guitar player. He was doing things that no other guitar player was doing at the time, right? And really, I would sit on. He would take this lead. I would sit on the side on the stage with him, right? But just looking at him in admiration, going, how did he even think of that? How did he even think of doing that kind of stuff, right? And and I would nick things every once in a while. If you're up there, playing with somebody that is that good, and you don't, take a little bit from each of these guys that you're playing with, then you're a fool. If you're not learning from each person, then you're an absolute fool, right? So I always looked at Thin Lizzy as my absolute school of rock, because I got to play with so many great people. It's just unbelievable, and most people don't really get that, But I was gifted that, so I'm so appreciative of Phil getting me in the band in the first place, and being able to play with all these really gifted players.
Well, and I'm sure that goes both ways, and I'm sure if I was talking to them, and Of course, Gary's deceased, but if I could talk to him, he'd say the same thing about you, because what you do is phenomenal as well. And you were really the anchor throughout the whole period and the constant there. It's just amazing. But to be able to have a video document like this of yourself and Gary trading off and harmonizing, and the band looking and sounding so good. I know that the some of it, I guess it was originally shot for TV in Australia in '78, and it's been restored. And then the other cool thing is there are 5 additional songs that were not part of that telecast that have been added to this. So you get a full show of about 11 songs. And I was just blown away by it. I loved it. I can't wait to get it on Blu-ray and watch it and crank it up on my home theater. I know, reading some of the liner notes, I know they were able to restore some of it. I guess they couldn't find source material on others, but overall, for a document that's 44 years old, I thought it looked and sounded great.
Well, and you'll see on a couple of songs, the film isn't quite exactly as from that song to that song, and unfortunately, it's because of the oxidization of some of the tapes, some of the audio, and some of the visual. So people have to kind of take that into consideration, if you will, of kind of the age of this thing. But honestly, Eddie, this concert, I knew that there was a couple of YouTube tracks that came out, and somebody had put them on YouTube, and it was before it was mixed. And I was angry with that. That's not how the band sounds. God, that is not how it should be heard. So this was always an itch that I could not scratch. I needed to, get this concert up to scratch, right? And when I was afforded the chance to do that, when we finally found the multi-tracks, and we finally found the visual tracks, the record company let me go in with another guy who worked at Real World Studios to go in there and at least put a mix on this to level up the guitars and get Phil's voice sounding more like it should be sounding. So I was really grateful to the record company to let me and Ben go in there and do this and put it to right. So I'm really grateful for that. So I hope that people, when they listen to it, they'll see that there were problems, but it actually came out okay. It actually is pretty cool.
Oh, it's awesome to have this. It really, really is. I can't recommend it more highly to my audience. June 24th, you get the great documentary on Phil and this incredible concert that's been restored of Thin Lizzy with incredible drummer that I did not know, Mark Noisif, and of course Nassif, and of course the Gorham. Yeah. The Gorham Gary Moore combo, just unreal. One last thing, Scott, because I only have a minute or two left here, but I wanted to ask you about this. While they're watching the concert, when Phil introduces the song Warriors, which you co-wrote with him, he says this was a song written for Jimi Hendrix. I didn't know that. Can you talk about that?
Well, I didn't know that either, right? Until on the night, it was like, really?
And you co-wrote it.
Musically, I did. You did. You are not allowed. Phil let it be known way early on that he's the lyric meister, right? But and he had subjects that he would kind of pluck out of the air that he would start to write about. And sometimes you didn't really understand who he was writing about or why he was writing about this person, right? Like Angel from the Coast, years after we recorded that, he said, yeah, that was about you. I'm like, really?
Wow.
I had no idea,
Yeah.
So it's scenarios like that kind of that he would kind of let you know about, later on, that would really surprise you. So that was a surprise to me that this was, dedicated to Jimi Hendrix. But, I can see why. Phil was a massive Jimi Hendrix fan. If you, just watch the way he kind of stands on stage, it's almost like an emulation, a little bit of Jimi Hendrix, right? He was so enamored with Jimmy. And but you got to admit, he picked the right guy, right? If you're going to be if you're going to love one person, that's a great guy to be in love with.
Yeah, no doubt. And last thing, Scott, Thin Lizzy activity. You and I, last time we spoke, you said you were thinking about doing some stuff to commemorate certain anniversaries of the band, playing some live shows here and there. Any progress on that and doing a version of Thin Lizzy again?
Well, there's always, that possibility because, I love playing the songs and I love getting together with, different, really great players from different bands, which we've done, guys from Def Leppard, Guns N' Roses, Aerosmith, Judas Priest, Mammoth. We've had all of these guys come on board with us, right? So it's a tough thing. It's a tough ask to, ask these guys who already have their day jobs. So to coordinate, that kind of enterprise with people that you really want in the band, and they'll be touring at the same time that you want to get out there yourself. It's tough, So the logistics have to be right. The people have to be right, and like you were saying, the occasion has to be right. I will never use, Thin Lizzy as just purely a cash machine. That's just not going to happen with me. So if we can gel all these things together at a certain time, then absolutely, I will get out there and do my best to make it happen.
Well, listen, man, let's hope that I'd love to see that happen. And let's hope that some common sense gets into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and you and Phil and the band get finally put in there where you deserve to be. I don't know if that bothers you like it does us, the fans, but we'll keep pushing from our end and hope that happens soon. I know you turned up on the ballot a couple times, but you track that stuff, you get wrapped up in it, or it's not really all that important to you?
Well, funny, prior to, the last induction thing, I was doing a lot of interviews, and all of a sudden this question of the Hall of Fame kept coming up, and I kept thinking, why do they keep asking me these questions about the Hall of Fame? I had no idea at this point that we were even, considered for a position in the Hall of Fame. Until, we were on tour with Black Star Riders, and, Adam Parsons, one of our managers, came in and told us that we are being considered, and it was people like you, Eddie, that were really championing the cause, and I so appreciate that. And there were so many fans around the world that, put their vote in and all that. I'm not really sure if the Hall of Fame even looks at kind of votes. I think they probably have their own committee that they use, and whoever they choose on the time, that's going to be it. And that's fine. If we do make it at some point, great. I think more than anybody, Phil, without being really cheesy, I think Phil Lynott really deserves to be in there.
Of course he does.
So, we'll see. If there's still people out there like you, Eddie, that are helping bands like us out, that's just great. So, and thank you very much for that.
Well, I'll keep pounding the drums. I'm a voter. I'm not a nominator. I'm a voter, but we got to get you on the ballot again and find a way to get you in. So it's way, way, way overdue. Listen, it's great talking to you, Scott. It's been too long. I appreciate time. And again, everybody check out, I can't recommend more highly, this concert from 78, mind-blowing. And then, of course, the more recent thing, the Phil Lynott doc, all in this great package coming out on June 24th. So you can pre-order, mark your calendars, whatever you want to do. I hope you get over to the U.S. soon, back to your original homeland here, Scott, and get to see you. I hope you get over soon and we get to hang and get a beer or something.
Yeah, I got to get home at some point. I'm getting kind of homesick here, buddy, But, hey, listen, Eddie, I love you to death, and hopefully when I get to you in New York still, right?
Say again?
You're still in New York, right?
I'm in New Jersey, but I travel a lot, and I also have a second home in Vegas now. So if you're west, we can maybe hook up out that way as well.
Okay, well, I'll hunt you down, man. I'll buy you some dinner and a couple of drinks. How about that?
You just let me know. That's a plan. I would love to do that. And if you're in town, come and sit in, and we'll take calls, and we'll do a whole show together. I'd love to do that as well.
All right. It's a date, bud.
All right, Scott. All the best to you and the family. Thank you so much for the time. I hope to see you soon.
Okay, me too. See you later, Eddie. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. There he goes, everybody. Scott Gorham, just awesome. I mean, Jesus, it's ridiculous that we got to sit here and talk about a band like Thin Lizzy not being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The influence and impact that band has had, I've said it a million times. I understand that tragically here in the U.S., that entire band is known for one song, The Boys Are Back in Town. Outside of America, it is a totally different thing, like a dozen bona fide hits. There are so many great Thin Lizzy songs and albums that if you have not delved deeper than the one song you get pounded on 24/7 on classic rock radio, you are missing out. You are missing out because there is so much incredible music, so massively influential, and just disgraceful that they are still not in the Hall of Fame. But Scott Gorham, just an awesome guy, as you heard, and really the anchor on guitar for Thin Lizzy through a lot of other changes. I mean, I think a lot of people look at the Gorham Robertson, the Live and Dangerous, as the classic period. But my gosh, the time Gary Moore was there. And then at the end with Sykes there, just insanely great.